Hello, my drunken Buddhas. A fun one today, as I'm going to give you 10 killer techniques for guaranteed unhappiness, misery, and suffering. Because we all know you don't get enough of that already. We want to really, ramp up that misery, dial it up to 11, give you something to really complain about. Up until now, your complaints have maybe been thin gruel that no one's taking seriously. But with these techniques, people will take your complaining, they'll be hanging on your every word. So, I'm obviously being tongue-in-cheek, but these are things that almost everyone does that really locks them into a lot of misery, and you'll recognize some of them in yourself. And there's some learnings on how to be happier in each of them. So let's dive in. Number one is assuming that everything that your mind tells you is true. When your mind tells you, oh, that's never going to work, or I'm not good enough, he's an asshole. Your mind isn't interested in truth in these moments. It's interested in what helps you to survive. So if you believe that thing's not going to work, maybe there's just a lot of fear, and believing that is less risky. It means you won't do it. Or believing you're not good enough, the same kind of thing. It helps keep you small, which is safe. So your mind is not telling you what's true, it's telling you what's safe. Or with that guy who's an asshole, is that where he is fundamentally and absolutely at the deepest level? Was he born? Did people go, this isn't a baby, it's clearly just an asshole, it's a dickhead? No. You're coming up with that interpretation in this moment, not because it's true, because it helps you, decide, okay, they're a threat to something that I want to do, So your mind, in fact, lies more often than not. And you would do very well to be a bit more suspicious of your mind and just ask into that, is this really true? And ask the opposite. How would it be if the opposite were true? Maybe if I'm good enough. Maybe he's not an asshole. Maybe he's having a bad day. Maybe that thing might work. Learn about the structure of your mind and why your mind is saying certain things. That teaches you a lot more about how to act than just listening to its words and taking it at face value. Number two is to stay in your head as much as possible. Disconnect from your body. Don't feel any emotions. Just whenever anything happens, just get sucked into the labyrinth of thoughts in your mind. Again, this is how most people tend to live their lives. In fact, it's quite celebrated. Academics and scientists and so on, they're all successful people, CEOs and what have you. That just get rid of emotions, just be really rational and logical. This is a recipe for being a half human, dissociated. You when you cut yourself off from your body, you force yourself to repress all your negative emotions and also your positive emotions. So you end up very fragmented, disconnected from yourself, just totally detached in fantasy land in your head, and also unable to experience any of the juice of life, which comes through the body, through the sense of joy and happiness and creativity. It flows through you. These sort of academics sitting there just in their heads, or that these people aren't experiencing the juice of life. That this is not the good life. You don't want to be a disconnected half human being. Include the body. Then you've got heart. You've got the head, the heart, and the gut. These are three intelligences, almost like three brains you have. And you can use all of them to live a much wiser, more in tune, more aligned life. Number three is don't ever say what you really feel or think. This is a good one. This will give you a load of misery if you're interested. Just don't ever speak up and say, if someone says, do you like that film? Say whatever they want to hear, Or don't ever tell someone if you're upset, or if you don't want to go to that thing, don't ever say that. And now this is a very serious issue in some senses, because I understand I'm making light of it. It's very difficult for certain people maybe they've been in abusive situations to really speak their truth, to feel their truth, to express it. But when we don't do that, it makes us sick when we aren't able to authentically be ourselves. And a really good way of becoming happier in the world is gently resourcing those defenses, those parts of you that feel afraid or unsafe for you to be yourself. That lump in the throat that stops you from speaking up, that tension in the chest that stops you from dancing like you want to dance, or that feeling in the gut like you're not good enough that stops you from starting that business you want to start, or painting that painting, or whatever it is, right? We are here to be ourselves. If we deviate from that, it feels terrible. And that's a signal from the universe that we need to change something about what we're doing and meet the fears that are blocking us from being ourselves. This isn't optional. It's the rules of the game. As if you are authentic, if you're yourself, you have a better time. Number 4, take responsibility for everyone else's feelings, right? So you want to go through life. If you want to maximize your suffering, make sure you go through life trying to make sure everyone's feelings are just the right way, so that no one's ever upset, no one's ever sad. Don't let anyone ever get angry. Make sure that you cleverly anticipate everything that everyone's doing and say the things, do the things, behave in ways that you think is going to control those people, so they just so that they're just so, right? And everything's calm, we're all good. Again, now I'm making light of this. For many people, this comes from difficult experiences they had where they felt very unsafe. So it's easier said than done. But it's important to notice ourselves doing this. If we want to start to go unhappy, and noticing when we feel it's not okay for someone else to be sad or angry or whatever it is. That's a sign that we're not so comfortable with our own sadness, our own anger. And as we connect to our own sadness and our own anger, we actually become much more comfortable with other people. They can be sad and it's okay. We feel relaxed. We feel open. Someone else can even be angry and we feel pretty relaxed and pretty open. This is why it's important to have that emotional intelligence be connected to your body, your own emotions, because it means everyone else can then be like they are as well. Number 5 is similar, related. It's always, trying to change people. Again, if you want to suffer, make sure you try and change everybody. If they're not doing the dishes right, make sure you nip that in the bud and definitely try and change it. If they're not studying enough, just make sure you put on some pressure. Now, of course, we know that people never change because we're pressuring them, or almost never. So it's you're just going to come up against reality, and it's going to be painful when we try and change people. Instead, we have to notice what is it within us that feels so resistant to that person being that way, because that we can control. The other people, there's no hope in hell we have of controlling them. We can, however, feel the resistance inside ourselves to them being that way. It's difficult, it's challenging, but it's a much more secure route to happiness than trying to change everybody. Number 6 is to hate, punish, and berate yourself into improvement. So if you feel like you're not quite up to scratch in some area of your life, maybe you're not working hard enough, maybe you're not cleaning your flat regularly enough, maybe you're not, this is my own shadow coming forward here in these examples I'm choosing. Maybe you're not, it could be almost anything. You don't think you're creative enough or social enough, whatever it is. If you really want to, have a tricky life, make sure you just kind of hate yourself into submission. I certainly resonate with that, with just a lot of self-criticism of just trying to push myself forward, motivate, be better, Ben, just study more, be more. It doesn't work, or it works for a short period of time, but it's so painful and unpleasant. What we really, 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 really want at the deepest level is to be loved as we are. And although it's counterintuitive, that is the route as well, even to improving ourselves. Because if we really deep down want to improve in some way, and we're not just improving because society tells us we should be better, because our parents told us we should be better, then if we love ourselves, that improvement will happen naturally. If there's complete love and acceptance for ourselves, and part of us we suddenly spontaneously decide, I want my flat's a bit dirty. I want it to be clean. It's because it's an act of kindness to myself. We'll go and clean the flat. If I just hate myself because my flat's not clean, all that's going to happen is I'm going to smoke weed to deal with the pain of hating myself, and the flat will be even dirtier than before. Then I'll hate myself even more, and I'll smoke even more weed or whatever it is that that people do, and round and round you go. Whereas, self-love is the only way here in the long term. If you really want to get in the long term towards happiness, because how could there be any final state of happiness? What place in life would you like to get to where you're still just hating yourself? Like there's no vision of the good life that includes that. Number 7 is to take everything personally. This is a juicy one. If you make sure, the movement of the stars and the moon, take it personally that, every time there's a train is late, like it's a personal affront from God, who's personally intervened to fuck up your timetable. This is kind of like almost adding insult to injury when we take it personally. Now, I think you should acknowledge and respect your emotional reactions to things. If the train's late and you feel anger or fear because you're going to be late, it's definitely important to respect those and feel those parts of you. But when we take it personally, we aren't actually really acknowledging the feelings. What we do is we're reacting, we're acting out. Kind of like a toddler, we're kind of lashing out. It's like, it's being very dramatic. It happened to me. I can't believe it happened to me again. It's a way of sort of trying to get attention and have. It's almost like a bit of a sort of a sulk strategy that you can do if you want. There's nothing wrong with it. Go for it. It's just very, very painful. It's a great way of being miserable for sure. A much more sure route to happiness is to, feel those feelings, acknowledge them. If you have a reaction of anger, for example, that's to be respected. But you don't kind of lash out, you don't act it out. And you can become much more mature in this way. Number 8 is insisting on being right. This is a classic. It's like, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? It's one of the sort of the little maxims from Alcoholics Anonymous, from 12-step programs that I remember. Just because being right, there's so much juice in that. Just I need to be right. Just so defensive and angry, and all it is just like a sense of just afraid of being not good enough. It's like being seen to be wrong or weak somehow. And so really it's when we insist on being right, we're really bedding down into that sense of vulnerability and fear. Or I should say bedding down into it, we're repressing and resisting it more accurately. And that's incredibly painful. Again, a wiser route to happiness is when we notice that part of us insisting on being right, let it be there, let it come in. And just feel into what's underneath it. What are you defending? And you'll notice that there's always some vulnerability under there that the need to be right is defending against. And if you can meet that part of yourself, that part's very painful. That's some suffering you're carrying around with you. If you can feel that part, process it through, that hurt from when you were a kid and, a kid laughed at you at school because you got it wrong or something. And since then, you've just been wounded in that way and you insisted, from now on, I'm always going to be right. You don't need to carry that around. Feel into what's underneath it. We can let it go. You'll be glad of it. Being right is highly overrated. This brings us to number 9. Never take any responsibility for your feelings. So this is a really juicy way of ramping up the misery dial. So if maybe you're feeling angry, you might lash out at other people instead of taking responsibility for that anger. Or maybe if you're feeling sad, you'll just go and spend all your money on clothes, and that'll kind of deal with that problem, or if you're feeling trapped or stuck in life, maybe you will blame some group of people. It's the feminists. It's just feminism has gone rampant, and that's the issue here. Now, again, these are innocent strategies, but they're not very mature, and they cause a lot of suffering for themselves, the people in question, and the people around them as well. Because when we're not taking responsibility for our feelings, we have to act them out or project them outwards. So they come out in harmful ways, essentially. And it's very unpleasant to have to resist our own feelings and to lash out at other people, to judge other. This is actually very painful things to do if you're really paying attention. It feels good in a certain kind of way, there's a certain juice to it, but not being in love with all the people around you is a much more pleasant sensation, right, than judging everybody. I think everyone can agree on that. So, the route to happiness here is the counterintuitive but wise move of taking responsibility for how we're feeling. So, okay, I'm angry. Why am I angry? What's going on in me such that anger is coming up? Maybe there's some hurt below this I haven't taken responsibility for. Like, why am I feeling trapped? Like, what is that signal from my body telling me? Is there something I'm missing? Am I in the wrong job? Is there some way I'm behaving that's really dysfunctional that I need to look at? Our feelings are trying to tell us something, and we can have to take responsibility for that to get that wisdom. Now, number 10, again, somewhat related. This is to remain relentlessly and pathologically positive at all times. You're never feeling bad. It's just a learning experience. There's different flavors of kind of pathological positivity. There's people there's the straight up deniers who just, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm great. No, you're not. I can see, there's a tear in your eye. You're not feeling sad. Nope, it's nothing. Everything's fine. They sort of numb out to their own experience as a survival strategy. And this is a really, again, it's innocent. No one's doing this on purpose. It's a really painful place to be, where the pain is essentially, the emotional pain is so difficult. People have to numb out to it. And one of the ways they do that is this remaining positive, like everything's fine all the time. Then there's other people who they can recognize that there's some negative emotions there, but they kind of always put a spin on it as a way of denying. It's like, I'm angry, but I don't. They didn't know what they were doing. It's not their fault. If you're thinking about your parents or something, how they didn't look after you properly, it's like, well, they were trying their best. This is the way we kind of minimize the difficult emotions, the pain that we're feeling, because it's uncomfortable. So we have to try and kind of remain positive. This is a counterintuitive one, because you might think, well, why would you not want to remain positive all the time? Because it's not true. Because it's a mask. It's actually a resistance to negative emotions that we're feeling. No one is positive all of the time. We move between different states and emotions. And what the all the time positive person is attempting to do is to completely resist half of their experience and only accept another half, which is, again, a very painful way to move through the world. And they have to deceive themselves and lie to themselves a lot in order to maintain that. And you actually find out that over the long run, if you're trying to maintain that positivity, those deeply buried negative emotions can come out sideways in, physical maladies of various kinds, or you can find yourself suddenly exploding with rage. Sometimes the happiest, most confident people are simply the ones that are repressing the most difficult, challenging material, and so are actually behind the scenes very miserable, very unhappy, because they've got this huge reservoir of pain that they're carrying around with themselves. Whereas over the longer term, if you're not completely wedded to being positive all the time, you can allow some of those negative emotions. Then they can come up and process them. You're not carrying with them the rest of your life. And so on the whole, you actually have a lot greater balance of positive. And as you're moving through the negativity, there's lots more space for positivity. Because as you get more in touch with your emotions on every level, including the negative level, you get more in touch with all the juice of life, the creativity, the imagination, the inspiration, the motivation, the joy. It all comes together. It all moves together. You can have none of life or all of life. So looking at all these 10 different ways, you can notice again and again and again that the only thing that's really going on here in these different strategies of making ourselves miserable is we're just avoiding particular sensations, emotions, and feelings. So it's like trying to stay in our head the whole time, trying to change other people, trying to take everything personally, being right, staying positive, not taking responsibility for our feelings. These are all ways of trying to feel better. Like we feel uncomfortable in some way. That other person's making us uncomfortable. That feeling makes us uncomfortable. What we really say or believe, we fear saying it because it might make us feel uncomfortable if the other person doesn't like it. So there are ways we're trying to stay safe from difficult emotion, but they make us so miserable in the long term, even though in the short term it lets us feel a little bit better. So the only real way to move towards happiness in this sense is to gradually increase your capacity to to get in touch with your body and be with these difficult emotions and experiences. It's all about growing in capacity to be with your experience. This is the path, the wise path to happiness. Because then you can process and transmute everything that all the reactions that are coming up as life's throwing different things at you. And you end up becoming much more flexible, more whole, more integrated, more wise. You're much more aligned. Your head, heart, and gut are working together. All these things are coming together to improve your life. Whereas when you're denying sort of different difficult emotions, you're trying to use these 10 killer techniques. You're always having to fragment, deny, repress, resist, change, push away, push against. It's a continuous struggle. And it's easy in the short term. It's easy to reject and resist and repress, and it's difficult to accept and move towards. But it's the wiser path over the long term, if you're going for happiness over unhappiness and misery and suffering. Beautiful. I want to reiterate that all the things I'm talking about, they're all innocent, unconscious things. So there's no blame or judgment for you or anyone else who's doing any of these things. It's very natural. But this is an opportunity to become more conscious of what's going on so you can change it. Hope that helps. I've got more resources in the description below of how to feel your feelings, how to resource yourself so you feel safe to feel your feelings, get in touch with the body, all that jazz. So check those out, and I'll see you later.